G'day, friends. Here we are in another episode of Philosophy with Fabian. The question I'm aiming to tackle today is the question: is it a simulation? Is it a game? And we're going to look into the conceptual what a game is, what a simulation is, and the two different perspectives that one could hold for and against the great mystery of the universe. Is it a game? What's prompted me to do this video entry was a video that I saw on the net recently about someone had asked the same question to Elon Musk, and I think he sort of shortcut the response by obviously it was in a different environment and had to give a kind of really rapid fire answer in a question and answer situation where he quickly just sort of said it could be, which is in fact my honest opinion as well, that it could be. We don't actually know. There's no way to actually ever find out. But through the logical consequence of what's called like a teleological philosophical understanding of things, teleology, in a technological, deterministic, philosophically speaking, he's gone and reviewed the idea that 30 years ago, 40 years ago, all that there was a Pong, which is just two rectangles and a ball, sort of played it off, and that obviously, which we can all agree upon, the rate of technological advancement is accelerating to the point where we have 3D rendering, topological graphics with multi-universal players all over the world. So this has all happened in a very short, logarithmically exponential expanding rate, which is to say that in 10 years time, who knows what it's going to look like. I remember when, was it called Half-Life? The Sims, when the Sims first came on the scene, it was like, you're spending all your time on this game, and the game kind of seems at times more real than reality. Now this cybernetic understanding of this cybernetic sort of philosophy has sort of wedged itself into the available ontological menu of what reality is. This only came about, I think, in the 20th century through the cyberpunk movement, where you've got the Matrix that kind of capstoned it all. The Wachowski brothers sort of now laying claim to have been made a documentary makers. So their philosophy, the movie The Matrix was based on a philosophy, French philosophy, coming from the late postmodern Jean Baudrillard, who was sort of at the party with the late symbolists, the postmodernists, Baudrillard and the rest of that crew, who sort of took Nietzsche's sort of nihilism and said, well, let's build upon that. And really, what the end of philosophy, I think, was one of their main titles, was like a revision, a recycling of looking back upon looking back upon looking back. And what this novel was about, what this philosophy, this angle, this perspective, this simula and simulacrum, let me say that really complicated book to read. The English translation does no justice to the French imagination. Nonetheless, this idea that the simulation would originally be used as a referential point toward something of greater reality, right? Like a sign, a stop sign. And then this book goes on to describe that there's an evolution of this semiotic appetition for man, that we're getting so dependent upon our signs, and that they're actually replacing the reality itself. There's a four-step process in which he gives this beautiful example of a visit to a canyon. I should wrap this up, but it's a bit of a sidetrack, whereby we're actually, seeing models of things that are being replaced, that are replacing reality, as it were. So he gives this example in the book where I think it's a canyon. One can go on an excursion, but no longer can we actually see these caves in this canyon. Instead, in the lobby, you're given a much smaller, sort of true to scale, a representation of what this canyon looks like, and that is then taken for reality. So that's an example of how a simulation replaces the real thing. So following that logic, then the simulation that we're apparently living in would then have to be once representative of a greater, more true reality, as it were. Now, what does that mean? Okay, obviously it's very clear that we can tell the distinction between what a virtual reality is and what a real reality is, but is it? Many philosophers have said that the virtual reality began when we started laying concrete through the forests, and now we have these external representations of the internal workings of man. So then, what would this real reality look like? Is it the world of Platonic idealism? It can't really be known. So then, yeah, to an extent we are living in a simulation, as it were, and that there's a good argument that we can never actually get a good grip on real reality, because the senses are constantly deceiving us, the mind is constantly playing tricks on us. Take any sort of 5-second, take this quiz to see if visual appetition is spot on, where it simply can be two things at once, the old Rorschach test and so forth. So it's clear to see that, unfortunately, the demands on the human sensory system are exceedingly pressurized. That's a bit of a tangent, but let's wind this up, because where I think Elon Musk was going with this whole teleological thing, and the power behind what he's saying is in fact supported by this crazy idea that there's a lot of money invested in this game, sort of thing. So it should be made a distinction, because by him saying that there's a visualization of the possibility that this really could be a game or a simulation, there should be made a distinction between the game and a simulation. And in order to do that, let's not get too wrapped up in the semiotics behind it all, but I think we as Westerners get freaked out by the idea of it being a game or a simulation, because the rationale as such sort of leaves us begging the question how and why, which there is an endless scientific quest unfolding in that realm, and a damn good job at doing so. The results are very concordant when one says it's probably just mathematics, to a point, but I think it could be a linguistic thing, syntactical, where there are laws and grammatical laws, sort of thing. So yeah, that's what freaks us out, that as Westerners we have inherited this idea of deism from the 1800s, that this it's really our relationship with the divine gets put into question. Why don't we have anything to do with the game, as it were? Deism, which is this idea that the deity is some sort of clockmaker. He made this thing and then left, and we never see him again. And it's just sort of entropic forces will just slowly fizzle out, and we just hear like the you know, the inheritors of all this chaotic mess, and eventually our species too will die out. But I think that's sort of taking a twist now, and it's sort of becoming flip-sided, and for the greater good. There's the idea that, you know, I think our relationship with what a creator is sort of being transposed, and we're looking at what our relationship with a maintenance, like what is keeping the game going, sort of thing. Because obviously, it's the great mystery of being. We're somehow involved in it, and so let's look at the Eastern perspective. And when someone would say, you know, maybe this is just all God's game, or maybe it is, and how humbling of an experience it is to be involved in such an orchestration of beauty and suffering and reality and all the kit and caboodle beyond our conceptual imagination. So maybe it is, and really it boils down to our feeling about the unfolding of events, and our relationship with the omnipotent, omniscient, unseen, and that would really signify. It says a lot about one's individual proclamation, one's individual constituency, and whether or not our idea of God is some kind of cruel creator child who just put, like with the big magnifying glass, has, you know, ants at his disposal to, if anyone's done that when they were a kid, and the power in the Almighty. But that's not to say that we should not be afraid, because one could not just submit oneself to blind fate either. So the simulation, the game. In the East, it's called Lila, Lila, which is not game as it was, like a soccer ball game or like a point scoring game. Lila is the dance, it's the play, right? So first and foremost, let's get some things clear. First and foremost, it doesn't matter, okay? It does not matter. That's the teaching of the Buddha, who said it doesn't matter if it is a game or not. It doesn't matter. We should not boggle the mind with striving to understand that which is beyond human comprehension. We're monkeys, remember? Secondly, the distinction between a simulation and a game has to be made, because that would sort of beg the question of a teleological something that we could never understand, which is terribly anti-human and non-anthropocentric, and it's the end of that inherited 19th century deistic, you know, poor us sort of thing, which is a Protestant, very much built into our hardwired system, Protestant understanding of the world. And then finally, that it is a game, and this is the end of it. It's the end of it in the sense that it's becoming undone, and the end is the preparation for another beginning. This is really heavy to hold, but it's the idea that obviously that there are things beyond our comprehension, and that we can begin to comprehend that there's things beyond our comprehension. I think there was a philosopher in the 1900s who said, and we will all be watched over by machines of loving grace. Perhaps that is what's happening. Perhaps that our machines are getting so well fed. I mean, look at this example given the other day with Twitter as the feeding information, the tube of data that is given to the AI. You know, that's all our thoughts relayed back and forth between each other. accessible by a computer to generate real life stuff. So yeah, it doesn't matter, as I say. In the end, it does not matter. That is said because the AI will not look anything like what we expect it to look. It's going to be something so beyond comprehension at this small understanding that it's something that we could not possibly fathom. And I mean, just try and describe anything you see on your benchtop today to someone 30 years ago. Add that in the mix with the social media stuff, and it's just beyond comprehension. So, look, I'm asking you for a matter of submitting to fate, as it were, submitting your faith to, not to the machine, but that nature is in control of all of this. Which brings us to an understanding of time as a phenomenon that, yes, okay, this is a Leela, this is a giant play, and there's good and evil, and throughout the ages there have been scriptural prophecies of certain indications of which humanity is on the right track and the wrong track. Morals have been elucidated, and this idea that we're in the age of Kali, this is pretty important to understand, because I think that if it is a game, then the game aspect is a dice game, and it's kind of like a short straw. The fourth straw is the age of Kali. The four ages, as it was, have been divided up, and this is the Hindu idea of the Kali Yuga, that four yugas of the world cycles have been divided up, and so now, starting with the disappearance of Krishna 5,000 years ago, the age of Kali is unfolding. And before that was a different age, and before that age, the Satya Yuga was the Dwapara Yuga, and so forth. And all these ages are sort of having a shot at orchestrating this game, which would imply that age has something to do with time, which has something to do with nature, which is beyond the control of the ordinary realm human beings. But we shouldn't think about it. This is what I say. It's like, if you remember the game, you don't say, do you remember the game? But unfortunately, we're in this game, and the game is awakening. The game is just remembering that we're asleep and waking up again and again, and discovering one's karma, discovering the best ability to dance with the karma. Whether that means waking others up, that's completely up to you, right? That's pretty much all I have to say on the matter. That it's a game beyond, well, beyond comprehension. Namaste. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope that this video has some kind of dulling of the senses of the paranoid and a call towards the light of truth and faith and intuition and all that can manifest therefrom. And enjoy it for what it's worth.